Hi, thanks for joining me for Bible study. We're still in the book of Matthew chapter 17 now, and we're connecting it to something that we looked at last week in chapter 16, because Jesus gives a high challenge to those that think they want to be his followers, that we will have to take up a cross and follow him. If we want to be where he is, this is the way of the cross. But he says it'll be worth it. The Son of Man is going to come in the glory with his angels, and he'll reward each one of his followers according to their works. And then he makes a bold statement there at the end of chapter 16. He says, there's some standing here who will not die and will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And that baffles a lot of people. But again, remember what we've been talking about with the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God is at hand. Why? Because the king is here. His reign is beginning. The reign of the king has begun. And so he says, some of these here, they're not going to die until they see the Son of Man reigning. And every one of the gospel writers who make that statement connect it to the story we're going to read today. So that's the end of chapter 16. The very next thing that Matthew tells us is that after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as the light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. Then Peter answered and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And suddenly a voice came out of the cloud saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were greatly afraid. But Jesus came and touched them and said, Arise, do not be afraid. When they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. Now as they came down from the mountain, Jesus commanded them, saying, Tell the vision to no one till the Son of Man is risen from the dead. And his disciples asked him, saying, Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Jesus answered and said to them, Indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already, and they did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. Likewise, the Son of Man is also about to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. So he makes this bold statement, and those that were eyewitnesses, they say, and this is how this is fulfilled. So we don't have to wonder, did Jesus misspeak, or what was he talking about there? They all agree this is an evidence. And I think it's important for us to think about that Jesus made a bold statement when he said, I'm coming and my reward will be with me. I'm the king and I will reward my servants who follow me, even through this painful path. We want to have some assurance that that's for real. And so Jesus gives those people the assurance they need, first and foremost by revealing his glory, revealing that he really is that magnificent king who is coming, the king that was foreseen in the prophets, like Daniel chapter 10 and other places. But Daniel chapter 10 figures heavily in this. They see the reign of the king revealed with all of the glory, all of the majesty, it would seem. And so let's walk our way through this from the eyes of Peter, James, and John. They're called aside. It just takes the 3 of them. And he takes those 3 up on the mountain, and Luke tells us that Jesus was praying. And the disciples are a little bit like me. if it gets very quiet for very long, praying as I am, I might still go to sleep. And that's what happened. They fell asleep. And they awoke seeing Jesus in blazing white and his skin literally shining like the sun. Now, Moses was up on the mountain in the book of Exodus, and when he came down, his face kind of glowed and it was freaking out the Israelites. But that was a merely reflected glory that had been absorbed. This is like the sun. This is a whole different realm. Again, going back to things that Daniel and Ezekiel saw, Isaiah, even Moses himself, when he saw the blazing fire, the fiery being on the mountain in Exodus 24. And so this is next level. And speaking of Moses, that's who shows up in this. Is Moses and Elijah are there. Now, we often wonder, as little scholars that we are, it's like, well, how does Peter, James, and John know what Moses and Elijah look like? They hadn't watched the Ten Commandments, or they didn't have paintings and those things, but they knew who they were, didn't they? And in like manner, they tell us Moses and Elijah are there. And Luke tells us even what they were talking about, that Jesus was going to accomplish a departure in Jerusalem. And it's easy to understand that being his upcoming death. But the word he uses is a very familiar word for those of us. It's Jesus' exodus. Because it's not just any kind of death, it is a delivering death that he's going to accomplish, a salvation that rescues. Because we know that's what the Exodus is about. And so Moses and Elijah are there, and there's Jesus, and they're just having this conversation. We're not sure what's going on with the conversation. I would love to have been a fly on the wall on that one, right? But we are told that as it looked like Moses and Elijah might be leaving, Peter he doesn't know what to say, but he wants to say something to keep it from stopping. And so he asked that he might build and serve these three. We'll make tabernacles. We'll make temporary shelters for you and Moses and Elijah, that you might stay with us on this mountain. Stay with us. I don't think it would have mattered, right? It's not like those people needed shelter. But he just didn't want it to end. And we have then a bright cloud overshadowing, coming upon the scene, so that they can't see Jesus or anyone. But the voice says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." This is my beloved Son. They've heard that before when Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. But probably the most significant is that command, hear him. Listen to him. Don't get lost in the weeds here. Take the message of Jesus. Moses is good. He represents all the law. The law points to the Messiah. From Genesis 3 forward, we're foretold there'll be one who'll come to fix all things. Elijah represents the prophets, the mighty prophet who didn't even die. God took him up to heaven with him. And at the close of the prophetic books of the Hebrew scriptures, Malachi tells Elijah will come again. And so for 400 years they were waiting. Elijah will come first before the Messiah comes. We wait. And then, not known to everybody, but the angel told a priest in the temple Your son will come in the spirit and the power of Elijah. And did he ever? And so the voice comes from the heavens. Moses and Elijah are good, but listen to Jesus. Listen to Jesus. He's what they pointed forward to. Elijah and all the prophets looked forward and foretold of the coming of the Messiah, the Anointed One. Moses foretold a prophet like him who would have even closer intimacy with God will come. Hear him. And so you know what that means to us. We need to be listening to Jesus. We need to be listening to those who have heard Jesus, the apostles and the prophets. The church, the new temple, is built on the foundation laid by the apostles and prophets, what we call the New Testament, the New Covenant, with Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. There in Ephesians chapter 2 is what I'm referencing. And so this is the magnificent vision. And as that vision takes place, the words are heard till they fall to the ground, they cover their faces. And when the next thing they know, they feel a hand touch them. And it's Jesus saying, arise. Fear not. You don't have to be afraid. And when they dared to lift their eyes, they just saw Jesus again, veiled in flesh once again. Now you can imagine something like that. It's going to be hard to process. Part of them wants to tell everybody what they saw. Part of them probably is a little afraid to say anything to anybody. They might be thought to be mad. But Jesus tells them, don't tell anyone of what you've seen until the Son of Man is risen from the dead. He's always referring to himself in that way. Until I rise from the dead, don't tell anyone. And you know that had to be baffling to them because they're like, there you go again. I don't understand this whole rising from the dead. But instead of asking that question, they really ask a different question, but it's still relative. They had just seen Elijah, and they had just witnessed this revealing of their Jesus as being the majesty, the king. But is this what we just saw that fulfills what Malachi said? Because it says that Elijah is going to come first and he's going to preach and do all these things. Is that, what does this mean, Jesus? And so Jesus gives them the answer there in verses 11 and following. And that's one reason why I'm glad we're in Matthew, is we get more details about this. And he says, indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. And I think it's fascinating that Jesus uses the future tense. Did you notice that? It's going to happen. He's already setting the groundwork that there's going to be two comings. He's in the first coming, but there will be a second coming. And before the second coming, there'll be another appearance of Elijah. But he says Elijah has already come as well. Right? It's kind of like, what does that mean? Elijah will come and Elijah has come? And Jesus says Elijah came, and they didn't even recognize that it was Elijah. And they rejected him, and they did to him as they pleased. They had him murdered. And he says, mark my words, the Son of Man will suffer the same things at their hands. They will have him murdered. And they understand enough to know John the Baptist is Elijah. He fulfilled it. He came first, preaching the way of righteousness, and baptizing those that repented, he was Elijah. And he was killed. He was killed by that Roman governor, the king, used loosely, a descendant of Herod. But they still don't understand how that's going to apply to Jesus. So he says, you're right, but it's more complicated than you realize. But nonetheless, God will accomplish his mission. He will accomplish his mission through Elijah, and the Messiah will accomplish his mission as well. Even though the disciples don't yet fully understand it all. There's still a lot to learn in this. And I guess there's a lot for us to learn as well. And so, as we step back then, look back on what we learned. The King is coming one day with all of his glory and majesty. And we can know that for two reasons. One, because of this magnificent vision Peter, James, and John saw. Gave us a glimpse that Jesus is more than just a carpenter, more than just a good teacher. He is God in the flesh. But he's also demonstrated that we can take his words for real, because he said, don't tell until I'm risen from the dead. He rose from the dead. He has defeated sin, death, and the grave. He has overcome. And so we can know he's going to finish his work. And then we can join John in saying, even so, Lord, come quickly. So I pray that we contemplate on this and learn from this. I'm glad you joined me. God bless you. God keep you. And we'll see you next time as we continue our study.